Welcome to the Lifestyle Recovery Education Program. This is Learning Module 4 of 5, Spiritual Nutrition. This is the fourth course in the 5-part series designed to support those living a divided lifestyle and are looking to feel whole again. Any individual seeking personal transformation, including those navigating trauma or chronic stress, are more than welcome to take this workshop. So, what is spiritual nutrition? It is the restoration of unity between body and spirit, and it really involves reversing fragmented or fragmentation caused by stress and trauma through mindful and intentional spiritual practices. So, to become spiritually aligned, one really must go through the process of learning how to become unified with themselves and with others. And this is especially the case for someone who is undergoing a progressively challenging at home situation. So, if we are going to change our lifestyles, we need to understand the purpose of unity and being whole again. So, I do want to make a little notation here that this presentation or workshop is a non-denominational course. We do not identify with any one particular religion because this is not a course about religion. Rather, we have compiled information from the truest sources that underline spirituality and what it truly means to be spiritually aligned. Such sources are going to be some teachings of Jesus, but without the religious dogma of Christianity. And we'll also be using some ancient teachings from Buddhism and Hinduism, and also other frameworks from metaphysical sciences. The goal of spiritual nutrition, really, again, is to cover all the aspects of spirituality while looking through a non biased lens, taking into consideration the primary message from the major religions as a whole. And we will be using some other profound findings that were really standing out in my historical studies. So, of course, you already are well aware of my qualifications if you have not just joined, but have done modules 1 through 3. And the particular degree that really stands out during this presentation is going to be my PhD in spiritual philosophy. That is Doctor of Metaphysical Humanistic Sciences, with the certification of the ordained minister underneath it, and certified recovery peer specialist. So, being said that, let's go ahead and jump right on in and start with clarifying this spirit. So, first, we need to clarify the spirit because there's really a great deal of confusion on this matter. You'll read through a number of resources that really detail the components of body and spirit, and you'll hear people talk about body, mind, spirit, or body, soul, spirit. And some people will actually add 4 parts, making it body, mind, spirit, and soul. And by the time you really get done trying to figure something out or learn something basic, you really feel just very confused and not understanding really what all of these components are and why they all describe you. And so we really want to go ahead and get away from this distorted way of looking at this topic and really simplify it. So let's begin with body, since that's the easiest thing to detail. So as you can see from the table, the body is a physical constituent and it's a material mode of being. It is formed from the dust of the earth, which means that we are made of the same substances that the earth is made from: magnesium, iron, zinc, carbohydrates, proteins, fats, etc. And so the body is really the tangible aspect of a human being. It is matter, it is the mechanics of the body. So the organ of the brain and the blood and organs in your torso. It is the thing which you can see and feel, right? Tangible. And so in Hebrew, which is one of the earliest languages to rise, Bishar can mean physical body or the flesh. And here on the side, what we have detailed is a periodic table. And I want you to see here that originally we realized that there were only 94 elements on Earth. And over time, man has made the remaining elements to equal up to 118 elements. And so, what we have realized is that the human body actually has all 94 of these elements inside of it at any given time, depending on what we are consuming as food. And so, we want to just understand that we are made from the very same thing that the earth is made out of. This is a scientific fact. This isn't a biblical thing. It's just now being proven 2 millennia later. And another thing I just really want to bring to your attention is that atoms are elements, and some elements like copper don't even join together. They just stay in their natural form and exist as individual atoms. So moving forward, let's just go ahead and clarify what the spirit is. It is the non-physical constituent and the immaterial mode of being. And so the spirit, or the pneuma, which word that you may be very familiar with is pneumonia, okay, which is where that comes from, is the life force from the spiritual realm. And it's given by the thing we call God or the source, that way there's no misinterpretations on what I'm trying to say. And so it is the intangible part of the human being. It is what animates the human body, and it's characterized according to this work as the spiritual conscious thought, what is not seen. It is who you truly are at the core. And in Hebrew, the word rak can mean either breath or spirit, which is where pneuma comes from, right? Meaning breath, to breathe. And so if you have pneumonia, then you have problems breathing, right? And so really, spirit just signifies the divine life force or essence that really gives life to the body. And so now we have another component, and that is the soul. But a lot of people will really use this component as the third component, and that's actually not the case. It took me a long time to kind of figure this out after lots of research. But basically, it is the whole being constituent, and the nexus is the mode of being. And so, really, we describe the soul according to research as the psyche. It unites the spirit and the body into one living being. It implies the whole self. According to the Oxford Dictionary, the English word psyche, originating from Greek, of course, is defined as the human soul or the mind. It is the whole self, similar to describing one's personality, combination of qualities, both non-physical and physical, that form an individual's character. So according to the dictionary, it is the combination of qualities, both non-physical and physical, that form an individual's character. So it is one's individuality that distinguishes them from other people. Okay, so it is like a spiritual fingerprint, so to speak, or your mentality. So the mind or the whole self is really going to integrate discernment and intuition and free will of the spirit through its thoughts. Then the spirit will influence the body's outcome and its external actions or behaviors, so to speak, with its inner convictions and choices. So again, it is the nexus of the first two parts, the thing that brings those parts together. It is not another part, okay? It is who you are at the core when you put the body and the spirit together. So it is the whole, right? And so it is the seen, the material, the body, and the unseen, the immaterial, and the spirit as a whole. And so, according to word etymology, the soul and the mind are really going to be the same thing. And in Hebrew, nephesh is literally the meaning for soul or the living being or the self. Humans often miss the mark on what this really means because they don't really understand that the soul means the whole self and it's not another part. It's spirit and soul are not the same thing. And they're not two separate things, but rather the soul is the union of that body and spirit. It is who you are at the core with everything together. And so we really like to bring to light the soul complex. The soul is the whole, as you can see from the figure here. A half plus a half equals a whole. It is so simple that even a child can understand this. Why can't we understand it as adults? So every human is even born with a living soul. That is, God made man by placing the life of the immaterial spirit within a material vessel. We are not three or four things. We are one unified whole. And I like to think of this merging as looking at a coin. There are two sides, but only one object. So the creator intentionally unified two opposites or opposing forces. Now, this is not the same as dualism, which are two separate substances. We are talking about the convergence of two things, visible and invisible, that are both made from the same substance, but they are manifesting in different ways. We call this same one substance energy. And so energy can manifest into a physical thing, which is what we see, or it can remain invisible and we cannot see it. But that doesn't mean it's a different substance. And so that's where Rene Descartes is incorrect about the body and the mind, right? But I'm talking about the body and the spirit, but that's probably what he meant. So we really want to understand that duality is really a distorted view of singularity. And I like to call this way of thinking a dualistic monism instead of just dualism or just monism, right? It's one coin with two sides. Very simple. So, what is the spirit? So, throughout history, various traditions have attempted to describe or define the spirit. In science, the spirit is studied as an electromagnetic biofield surrounding living organisms. In New Age spiritualism, it's called the aura, the radiant energy from the source. In contrast, Christianity identifies it as the Holy Spirit, sacred part of God Himself, the light of life. Eastern religion research further distinguishes the spirit as being a subtle dimension of non dual consciousness. Okay, so we're back to being non dual again. And despite different terminology, in mysticism, It is defined or identified as a being of vibrational frequency or light directly sourced from the one creator. So all of the names for the spirit are broken down to basically say electromagnetic field, aura, Holy Spirit, non dual consciousness, vibrational frequency, and light. So, this section is important because it's going to teach people how to shift from a fragmented subject object mindset to a unified way of seeing. This is essential for really understanding lifestyle transformation and healing after facing some of our major challenges. And so we want to understand unity and spiritual alignment so we can sustain and maintain this spiritual change, as we talk about in the very first workshop. Subject object distinctions. When we talk about spirituality, we really need to understand what spiritual alignment is. Sometimes, when discussing this topic, we will use terms such as non dual consciousness or non dual awareness. And these are just other terms for oneness. When an individual is in complete spiritual alignment or unity, the subject object distinctions of that person will actually begin to dissolve. But in order to understand that, we need to learn what subject object really means. And so, really, it's the ordinary perception of humans experiencing themselves as subjects looking at other objects. In other words, we think we are separate, okay? We think we are a different identity from other people. But the truth is, with the perception of oneness, we look at the very thing being observed as ourselves. Or, as one study calls it, the emptiness of inherent existence. Because we are everything, but we are nothing at the same time. It's kind of like, wait a minute, what? So, as you can see from this image, when I would look at another person yelling, normally I would see it as some crazy person yelling at me. But when I use a subject object distinction and get rid of that and see everything as myself, then I realize the person who's actually yelling is myself. So I have to see and say to myself, I am the person yelling at me, or I am the person who's suffering over there. I am the person who's afraid to talk to me, and I am the person who's crying. When it comes to viewing life, okay, we view subject object as I am the birds and the bees. I am the animal up for slaughter. I am the trees and the plants, and I am the ocean and the mountains. The key term being discussed regarding spiritual alignment here is really non duality. In the state of oneness, the conscious experiences life in its truest form. Why? Because we realize we are everything in existence. Some of the quotes that are very popular from the Bible, one of them is, I and the Father are one. From the Law of One, one of the quotes is, all is one, separation is the illusion. And from A Course in Miracles, another popular one is, there is no separation of God and his creation. And so all these quotes really do is help remind us that we are everything. We are one with God and the universe. So we really want to talk about, in this section, unlifting the veil. Unbound consciousness is the immaterial, eternal, all knowing source of all experience. This includes the illusion of separateness that we call individual identity. That is preventing us from understanding the truth of oneness. Eastern traditions and other teachings state that lifting the veil of perception and understanding we are everything and yet nothing, not a separate individual, reveals distortion in form. Some other quotes that are famous are, I am the Father and the Father is in me. You are located neither in this world nor in the world of that. Once the veil is lifted, distortion is seen for what it is. Okay, so the purpose of the veil is really to intensify the experience of the Creator, right? So the purpose of not seeing the truth is to intensify our experience. And once we understand the truth, it's become so very clear. And so, of course, the last quote is from the Course of Miracles, and it says that separation is merely another term for a split mind. This image here just really depicts a woman finally coming to terms with everything in the world is her, and she treats them as if she were doing it to herself. And at this moment, she realizes she's everything yet nothing at the same time because everything is one. The law of conservation of energy. So many people compare spiritual teachings with science. So let us take a look at what science says regarding this principle of unity that I am discussing. The law of conservation of energy was discovered by Julius Robert von Meyer in the 1840s, and it states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only change form. This implies that everything is made from the same intelligent, infinite energy or God source. This would inevitably mean that we are all the same thing. There is no me and you distinction. I am everything, and yet I am nothing. I am. And Jesus even plainly stated before Abraham, I am. And so here in this image, we just show how energy transfers from organism to organism. Chemical energy transfers into motion, radiant into chemical, electrical into thermal, etc. It just keeps going round and round and round. Light energy in the spirit particle. Since 1808, we have known that the most basic level, our bodies, all of life, and the non-living world are made up of atoms or elements from the periodic table, as we discussed previously. Atoms are charged through two opposing forces, negative anions or positive cations. Electrons are negative and protons are positive. And they are charged with one source, which is light energy or radiant energy. And so when you look at this image over here, you can see that we have finally, just recently as a matter of fact, have been able to see down to the core of molecules. And in this picture, these little yellow dots are actually pairs of atoms before they start to create molecules. And the red area is what we call a negative electron cloud. Inside the atoms are going to be the protons that are attracting a negative force. And so it's very clear that electron clouds surround atoms and provide negative grounding, while protons are the positive charge. So it's two things, and it's always two things. There's never three things or four or five or six. It's two things that sit together as a balance for one thing, right? And so that is the way of life: positive and negative, up and down, black and white, body and spirit. The view of Lady Anne Conway. Looking at spiritual alignment from a philosophical viewpoint, Lady Anne Conway, born in 1631, proposed that all creations are infinite, including creatures and worlds and spirits. She claimed that all things are unified in structure, possessing all spirit particles. So, one type of particle, spirit particles. Also, she proposed that there is a God source of some sort, and that the creator is a unified, eternal, immaterial, and immutable substance developed from a spirit, light, and life without division, time, or physical form. And these words are important to remember because later on in this workshop, you're going to learn all about division. She also wrote, in order to create life, the creator must be inherently good, that is, at least loving, that all creations are mutable, which means forever changing. That sounds a lot like the transformation of energy in its various forms. Okay, so Lady Anne Conway, the purpose of embodiment is to become aware of what we are and to learn to live from it by expressing that oneness through creation. Learning unity. So this section details some extraordinary experiences, revealing how easily lifestyle transformation can occur once understanding the concept of unity and oneness, which is a lived truth rather than just an idea at this point. So right now, we only have this concept as an idea, but let's just take a look at what some of the people in life have experienced when it's not an idea, when it actually becomes a living truth. The experience. So mankind is designed to experience life in unity, body and spirit, us and others, humans and nature. Okay, we are designed to work together as one unit, just like the cells in our body. The problem is really waking up to this revelation. The problem is discovering your greatest self. Near-death experience interviews are well documented, and according to NDE literature, individuals who temporarily separate and return to their material bodies report experiencing three main properties. Okay, and these properties are a profound understanding of oneness. This is the primary property. Unconditional love and purpose of projecting such emotion and beauty into society, and living in peace with all things in existence. So people have reported, thousands and thousands of cases have reported after they died, seeing themselves dead in spirit form. And so they actually become separated from the body. So there are two things going on inside, like the human being. Okay, we have a physical and then we have a spiritual. But what they notice when they separate from the body is that there's a oneness, and they understand it now. And so it's like everything becomes very clear to them. And they also understand the purpose of how important love is and how important it is to be at peace with everything around them, all people, animals, beings, nature, everything. Now, we also have something called spiritually transformative experiences. And according to meditation research, people who do not have near death experiences, okay, who have had mystical experiences report this same understanding of oneness. In fact, about 90% have disclosed feeling that same sense of bliss and peace within all existence. This image is a picture of me actually having what we are going to discuss next, which is a noetic experience, where I actually saw the source, the light orb. Okay. And so noetic experiences are experiences that some people have accidentally. And I had mine in the year 2020. And these experiences can be either us reaching other dimensions, I guess is how we understand it, or the source actually coming to us. Scientists aren't really entirely sure, but they do refer to these as peak or noetic experiences. And the Institute of Noetic Sciences defines these events as an understanding of our inner world, our shared reality, and the interconnection between all things. And what this means is that we understand that there is only one reality and that billions of people are unaware of this reality, that we are all one and we are all interconnected. William James, the American psychologist, defined noetic experiences as a state of knowledge because people who have had NEs report accessing truth. They will say things like, I had a download of knowledge and I know all these things now. We know everything. So it's accessing knowledge, accessing truth, and really identifying our existence as an intelligence, or some kind of energy intelligence with information. Many individuals can access these experiences on demand, through means of meditation, whereas the rest simply ask through prayer, channeling, or dream states. The commonality between these experiences is the sense of unity and love. And my experience occurred accidentally after a night of meditation after I went to sleep. So, a common teaching is that religions across all cultures, particularly Eastern traditions, spiritual teachers, and even Jesus, similarly teach the concept of unity. They teach that life is about both love and oneness. Hence, the purpose of being here in physical form is really to learn how to unite with each other in body and spirit, but also to learn to integrate with others and be capable of loving everything that we even interact with in every circumstance. So, this next section is about distortion, and it's going to show that by exposing the distortions in the real world, people can learn to recognize distortions much easier. And this helps them to make lifestyle changes with much less difficulty. So let's look at some of the common distortions when it comes to spirituality and how people really think about some of these things. So we'll start with order and chaos. Order cannot be imposed from the outside. It emerges naturally when we understand our disorder. Jiddu Krishnamurti, a great Indian spiritual teacher, taught that we cannot force ourselves into harmony through discipline, through rules or systems. True order, true spiritual alignment arises only when we observe our fragmentation without judgment. When we see clearly how we've become divided through fear, trauma and conditioning, and false beliefs, the very act of seeing begins the healing. People don't fix disorder by fighting it. They understand it, and in that understanding, order spontaneously emerges. When we think of unity, people really must come to an understanding that its opposition is going to be division, okay? Or separation, so to speak. For example, in math, one whole unit, unity, right, divided equals two halves. So unity is one whole and its opposition is division because you're splitting it up. So in spirituality, divided order equals disorder or chaos. Night and day. Do order and chaos represent unity and division? In Genesis, Jewish medieval commentators like Ibn Ezra, and lexicons defined Erev as evening, a time when forms are mixed, intermingled, confused, to grow dark or darkness. In other forms, it can mean inability to distinguish things clearly. In other words, the word Erev can be inferred as stating that the word night could also signify a person as in a state of confusion. And some synonyms of confusion are actually disorder, disorganized, unbalanced, and chaotic. So you can see here how Erev at the top means all of these things. And then when we look further into what some of those things mean, we can see that they become synonymous with chaos. And so nighttime or evening can be synonymous as being in a divided state. Now, the word voker is defined as dawn or morning or daybreak. It fundamentally means to break through or breaking through, or when the darkness ends. It is when one can distinguish between firms, to seek clarity, or when clarity returns. Let's take a look at the case of the sky. Evening. When we perceive the sky as dark, we are confused and separated from true reality. We are in a divided state. Darkness is not a property of the sky because there is no sky. Seeing the sky is a distortion. By calling the darkness of the sky evening, we can see how easily humans are divided from reality. Day. When the light comes, it is the dawning of truth. It shows us that we are in a single space, rotating. Light signals that we have pierced through the distortion of night. Here you can see in the images a distorted view of space when we see the sky, okay? And we see that it gets dark or light, and that space appears to be beyond. And then the next image we see from a different view. We see the unified truth of space, that we don't really have a sky, do we? There is no separation, okay? There's no day and there is no night. We are just simply planets with gaseous atmospheres revolving around a ball of fire that we call a sun in the same infinite space. And when we face the sun, it appears that we have daylight. Let's look at the case of El Diablo. This distortion is a bit tricky, so let's try to work with what we have here. Ha, Satan, in Hebrew literally means the adversary. In history, early Hebrew texts such as Job and Zechariah, when they say Ha Satan, it is portrayed more as a role in divine matters rather than someone's proper name. Greek texts later personifies Satan as an entity called the devil. So we have two things going on here. We have Hebrew texts, and then we have later Greek texts. El Diablos, or the devil, is recognized across all cultures and organized religious sects. In Greek, the term diabolo, as noted in the online etymology dictionary, derives the verb from diabalo, meaning to slander or accuse. So we can see here that the word devil refers to an action, not a person. The word breaks further down into dia, meaning through or across, and balo or bayo, meaning to throw. The act of throwing across, or the act of throwing through something. And here in this image is just the screenshots of the word diabolos and what it actually means, okay? Throwing through also means to divide. What do you know? Derived from diabolian, okay, which is a force that tears apart, causes division, or creates separation. Ultimately, adversary is defined as an opposition, a conflict, or to turn against. It is the very act of separating or turning mankind against the truth of the source, which is what? It's understanding that everything in existence is one energy that cannot be destroyed, right? That is the truth. And humans become divided against themselves by disassociating from these things, right? Opposing this truth or severing away from this reality that I am you and you are me. We are one energy that cannot be destroyed. Therefore, the devil is rather the power of distortion or the process of dividing the mind. Okay? And so when distortion is achieved, the divided mind leads to a corrupt heart. Thus, the metaphor, don't sell your soul to the devil, or don't let your mind become divided, right? So, how can people make successful changes if we cannot see these simple truths, okay, or the simplest truth? And so, below are some Diablo quotes where they talk about separation being merely another term for a split mind, okay, and that the devil is actually a projection of your own mind, teaching you to believe in lack and attack. Okay. And even in Mark, Jesus says, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." And what are the concerns of God? Unity, not division. So he's saying it right there that you are divided. You do not have unity in mind. Here, as you can see, we just have a fragmented mind in this photo, and the next photo is really very interesting. It is a divided highway. It is still one highway, regardless of which side you are on. You can have a distorted view and see two paths, or you can see the truth that this is one path using two separate directions, right? So one coin with two sides. So here is the spiritual truth of Satan. One of the clearest moments where Jesus actually defines the nature of the devil is found in one account of the healing miracle, the miracle of the house divided that cannot stand. And I kind of cut this short so you can read it for yourself. But Jesus knew their thoughts and said to them, "Every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself will not stand. If Satan casts out Satan, he is divided against himself. How will then his kingdom stand?" Meaning, how can I be Satan and cast out Satan of someone else, right? That alone is a divided way of thinking. And so we have to say to ourselves, how can a person achieve what is good, transform their life, if they persistently think in a divided fashion? The case of color. White light. In the Law of One, if you've ever listened or read it, Ra explains that the unity equates with the discovery of Isaac Newton's experiment in 1665, which showed that a prism bends one visible ray of white light. But what's so significant about this experiment? Well, as you can see from the image here, each color that reflects or refracts bends at a slightly different angle, okay, depending on the wavelength of the color. And so you can see here from red to purple, the wavelengths changing. However, regardless of frequency or wavelength, all colors still come from one pure, undistorted source of white light. Okay. And so the distortion is that humans are only able to perceive light within a very narrow spectrum. And that's the truth. We cannot see light. However, we cannot perceive those refractions, the rainbow, without light. So, light is coming in, but we wouldn't even be able to see a rainbow. If it was at night, we wouldn't be able to see it, right? If there was no light to begin with. So this is another distortion that we fail to realize sometimes. Not only is it one light split into many, many different forms and divisions, but we wouldn't even be able to see that if there was no light coming from the sun at all. So here is just a diagram of the sun projecting its rays onto us on Earth. And we can only see dead center, this narrow amount, while other animals and creatures can see any number of these other rays. So humans particularly can only see this, but that doesn't mean that there's not other light waves coming from the light or the sun. The case of God. So the word God is used throughout various religious texts and is usually interpreted as a personified supreme being. However, that would insinuate that God is a separate entity from all of existence, which contradicts the very nature of our existence. And so the word Yahweh also means Lord. And in Hebrew, Yahweh means to be self-existent or eternal. The root word also means to be or to exist. And Aramaic, it means the divine or the source. Okay, and you can see here from the screenshots on the left that this is what these things mean, right? Like, I'm not making this stuff up. Nowhere in here does it say that God is a person, okay? And so when this word was translated into Greek, they changed it to a person of authority, aligning it with Strong's God or a God or supreme being. And so they changed it into an identifiable entity. And so here are the Greek words for that, and theos is one of the common ones that you'll see in Greek literature. So what is God then? I mean, what is he? Well, let's investigate it and see, what people have written over the years and throughout history. So God as we know it is the root to all existence, intelligent, loving, creator of all things, self-existent, one and only, has no enemy or rivalry. Okay, the Alpha and Omega, the all encompassing, the non contingent upon or dependent on anything, right? One eternal thing, infinite without limit, no beginning and no end. So there is no person to combat him, I guess is what I'm trying to say. If he is a being, if he is all of these things, then why do we need a devil, or why do we need a person, right? An entity that is going to be combative with him when he can easily just put that thing out, right? So we have to think about some of the things that we say here when we describe God, and then we describe a rivalry or all overarching enemy. It doesn't make sense. If he is the one and only, why would he even need that? So if God is all of these things, then the question really comes down to, who are we? Right? And so that's easy to answer because Jesus answered it and said, I am. So my personal experience with meeting God, or the source, or the creator, whatever you want to call it, Jesus, it's just undescribable. I can't begin to describe it. I do have a video about it, but the words in that video do very little compared to what I really experience. And I just can't wait for every single one of you to experience it, because it was the most amazing thing that ever happened to me. And so these titles cannot cleanly express its significance, but it is light, okay? And this light is one euphoric, unconditional love and nothing else. It is just pure love. The case of sin. So the word sin is really used throughout various texts. However, Strong's H2398 describes it as missing the mark. So in word etymology, we really want to show that it means to miss the path, to err, to go astray, to miss the mark, to fail, to miss, to fail, or of uncertain origin. So really, what is the mark, right? We hear a lot of controversy about it. What is missing the mark? Well, the mark really is unity, right? And so whether our minds are divided and our hands are being held out to selfishly receive rather than to love, see beauty, or bring peace to all of the existence around us, are the true things that we need to comprehend. Are we like, is it all about me? Or are we like, you know what, it's all about them? And for successful lifestyle changes, we need to have a unified way of thinking, right? We don't want to be divided and having our hands out all the time, asking and receiving. We want to be giving as much as we can. So missing the mark really implies that a person's inability to perceive this truth, to see separation where there is only one unity, to go astray, wandering into the belief of separation, to fail to realize all is one, to misunderstand your very existence, becoming uncertain of your origin. It is deviation from spiritual alignment, and this is not moral condemnation. Okay, and so this photo here, once again, is just some screenshots from blueletterbible.com or whatnot, whichever one I was using. That really tells you what this word really means. So we want to understand distortion as a whole. Disorder really arises when the mind attempts to control its surroundings and efforts to disregard others, okay? Perceiving things as different, or to see the self as separate from the person or thing in front of you. Instead, a person should control their own actions and project love. Distortion is wandering away from the spiritual truth that you are not a separate entity from me, that we are all one equal, and that us as physical beings are united as one with the light. This truth is what hinders us from moving forward in life. And it is seeing that all of these divisions, distortions, and viewing ourselves as separate things from everything else and everyone else, it keeps us focused on us, ourselves, and stuck in our own suffering. Spiritual misalignment. So, spiritual misalignment is really going to manifest as an impaired connection between body and spirit. Okay, so it's basically going to be due to fear and inability to not see the distortions in front of us, whether we're refusing to see it or opposing or whatnot, like I explained earlier. And this really increases our diminished awareness, intrusive thoughts, isolation, and further division by separating us from other people. Distortions in your consciousness create separation from the law of one. And so spiritual alignment is really going to help us because it's going to pull a person out of this divided, chaotic way of seeing and into one coherent state. And from that unified state, their choices, habits, and lifestyles will naturally begin to line up. And so we have what we consider the victim and perpetrator misalignment. It really doesn't matter if you are the person who's the victim, if you witness a victim being abused or violated, or if you're actually the perpetrator in the situation doing it. All three of these people can be spiritually misaligned. There is no discrimination when it comes to spiritual misalignment. The primary symptoms of misalignment are characterized by guilt, shame, loss of trust from all beings in existence. It's simply being asleep while also awake. Conflicts with spirituality, difficulty forgiving other people, self-condemnation, and struggles with spiritual faith and religions are also going to be the cause of your spiritual struggles. Let's talk a little bit about service to self and the flow of negative energy. So as people, we constantly hurt others due to our selfishness. That is, because of our selfish ways, judgments, and selfish desires, we do not stop to think before reacting. And the hurt, this pain, it spreads to other people as negative energy. Okay? For example, an insult to a friend can hurt their feelings, which may cause them to go home and say something hurtful to someone else, like a family member, in efforts to release the pain. The following day, the family member may commit to a negative action toward another person, such as verbal abuse, assault, theft, property destruction, or bullying. The chain just continues. And remember, back to the subject-object part, I am you and you are me. And so when these things happen, we are the ones getting battered, our things destroyed, getting called names, okay? And this is because we're all one thing. So when we do one thing to someone else, we're doing it to ourselves. And so our intentions, rigidness, or centering of ourselves can be extremely harmful, and we don't even realize what we're doing. And our aim should be to do no harm always. So when we talk about service to others and the positive flow of energy, we can see that positive acts and helping others can do the exact opposite. And the chain reaction can be that your kindness causes a person to do wonderful acts in the world to other people. And so order is not imposed, okay? It arises naturally when distortion is seen without judgment. Henceforth, the terms know thyself and be not the judge or jury. This is the way to get our lives back on track, to truly find out who we are and discover our greatest selves. Finally, there are many different bridges to unity. Every religion or esoteric and ancient text can be a bridge to unification. There is no right or wrong religion, okay? As long as the path that we are taking chooses to help us spiritually grow and project love, then do it. So be it. Thank you so much for watching. True Paleo Inc. wants to thank you for your interest in using our self-directed Discover Your Greatest Self programs for your lifestyle and nutritional needs. For website information, you can visit us at www.truepaleoinc.org. You can also click on the QR code to go straight to the education guide. And please share this on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and other social media platforms.